This video is sponsored by Skillshare. Stick around to the end of the video to learn more about that. Let's start by going back in time. The year is 2003. It's 7 in the morning on a Saturday, and I'm a small boy. I've awakened early enough to catch Kirby Right Back At Ya and Sonic X on the Fox box. Technically, these are anime, but I don't know that yet. Fast forward to 2015, my then girlfriend, now wife, tells me, "Hey, I think you'd like to see this anime called Attack on Titan." I go, "Sure, okay, why not?" Jump forward 2 days. I've watched the whole thing. I'm obsessed. It was an innocent enough suggestion, but the after effects are something entirely different. She's created a terrifying beast on the prowl, hunting for any anime to consume. At first, I don't know it, but I soon realize a simple truth. I was fortunate. This is a high-quality anime, and as time goes on, I will have more and more trouble finding other shows that stand toe-to-toe with it. Leap over to December 16th, 2020. The horoscope tells me that my friend will offer valuable career tips, and I'm over 100 videos deep into a YouTube channel where I talk about anime. I've also decided to make a multi-part series comparing the Attack on Titan manga and anime. And you know how you get notified about new additions to multi-part series? You hit that subscribe.
Hello, it is I, Spoiler ARLERT, here to tell you that this video contains spoilers for the first season of the Attack on Titan anime and the first 34 chapters of the manga.
The Attack on Titan manga has some pretty sketchy artwork. There isn't much in the way of detail or shading. A lot of the backgrounds are barren and simplistic. Characters' faces morph a bit from panel to panel, and so on. Now, don't get me wrong, I don't really dislike Isayama's art, and he definitely has some strengths as an illustrator. In particular, I really like how he draws some of the Titans. The close-ups tend to have more detail, and their unpolished appearance adds to their creepiness. Meanwhile, the ragdoll weirdness of Titan hordes gives them this strange, unnatural, uncanny feel that makes them seem otherworldly and freaky. Even then though, there are some moments where the Titans look a bit unfinished in a way that doesn't really connect with me. Basically, in these first 34 chapters, I think the art is one of the manga's weak points. Isayama himself even commented on this in a 2014 interview, calling his art poor quality and awkward. Actually, he even went so far as to say, better to have memorable art, even memorably bad art, and stand out. Fortunately though, I think he's improved substantially as the manga's gone on, but I'll get to that more later. As for panel layouts and composition, also not too good. To be fair, it's never hard to follow what's going on. Things flow together well enough, and there's a decent sense of pacing. For example, when the action picks up, Isayama tends to use more sharp, angular panel shapes, which makes these moments stand out from the regular conversations. What I'm saying is that when a Titan punches another Titan, I feel that. But the actual panel construction, the way the elements in each individual panel look, they frequently lack organization and end up kind of awkward without a real focal point to latch onto. Again, all this isn't to say that the manga's art and panel composition is the worst or anything like that. No, that's just not true. They're just, okay. But then we have the anime.
She's the one, Cole.
Okay, right from the get-go, this anime is a looker. Sure, when I was a little baby anime boy, I took this for granted, but now that I've sifted through all these freaking shows, I can recognize how special this level of polish is, especially in a TV series. Aesthetically speaking, I love everything about this show. I love the fact that they use these bright, popping, contrasting colors despite the dark tone of the show and the universe it's set in. I love the detailed backgrounds that give the world a fantastic sense of depth, space, and place. I love the slick transitions. I love the impact of each sound effect and the impeccable mixing. The shot composition and general direction is also super strong. Of course, it's no secret that the big, bombastic moments look fantastic, but the direction is also strong in the calmer moments. Let's look at an example. See, there's this scene in the first episode where Mikasa is all like, Eren wants to join the Survey Corps, and Eren's like, Mikasa, why would you do this to me, bro? I didn't want Mom to know that, and of course, Mom has great displeasure, because the Survey Corps is dangerous. In the manga, there are flurries of action lines when the characters yell at each other and argue. Now, sometimes the anime uses these action lines too, and mimics the manga that way. But they aren't used here. To me, that, combined with the lack of music, gives this conversation a very down-to-earth, real feel. Given the context of what's coming up, this feels like the calm before the storm. Basically, my point is that the creators of this anime knew where to intelligently deviate a bit from the manga's tone. And the animation is just... Okay, I won't pretend every moment is perfect. There are a couple parts where we get these panning shots with characters talking over them, and I don't think those work all that well. But these are few and far between. This show, by and large, is a visual wonder. You get a glorious moment of animation, and then bam! You want another? Oh, and how about one more? Yeah, here's another! You like that, huh? Then how about one more again? And then there's the music. Hiroyuki Sawano truly outdid himself on this one. There's just such a large sense of scale here, with the operatic choir, the explosive brass, the soaring strings, the booming toms. Through this dense soundscape, the music manages to reflect the sheer enormity of the Titans. Most of the soundtrack also has this electronic flair to it, whether it be through the use of deep, buzzing synths or these burnt, crisp drums. To me, this lends the music a bit of an otherworldly tilt, as though to say, yeah, these Titans are weird, they're alien, we don't know what they are. There's a dissonance to the music too, sprinkled in here and there, like the Titans cracking through the harmonic structure of the pieces themselves. It's brilliant, and I love it. But these high-energy tracks aren't the only impressive ones. There are also more restrained pieces. Some are composed of almost entirely piano, while others simply pull things back a bit. Of course, the variety's welcome, and many of these more restrained pieces are used during the moments where the show takes a bit of a breather, where people aren't, getting chomped on left and right. There are also these rock songs. Now, these aren't my favorite part of the soundtrack, but they're pretty fun, and they're well used as insert songs to punctuate important moments of character growth or success or just big boy moments in general. The voice acting's great too. Now, I'm talking about the original Japanese acting because I haven't watched the dub. But as far as my English brain can tell, the performances are strong across the board. Isayama himself even mentioned in an interview how hearing Eren's voice helped him understand the character better. You can hear the weakness in the voice actor's voice, which makes it sound like he's bluffing. I've started to like Eren more and more ever since. In the end, the whole point of this section is just to say, bless these people. Bless everyone who put so much work into this show. Because this anime represents the titanic efforts of an impressively skilled group of people, and I love it. As far as presentation is concerned, this is one of the strongest anime adaptations I've seen. But, of course, there's still more to cover, because we haven't touched on the plot yet at all. So let's do that, starting with how the anime restructures the manga's events. Overall, the first season of Attack on Titan is an incredibly faithful adaptation. No major moments are left out, and in fact, some stuff is added in that highlights themes and ideas that were already present in the manga. But there is one major difference: structure. See, towards the beginning, the anime tells a largely chronological story. However, the manga jumps around a lot more. Here, we begin like the anime does, with the wall getting hoofed down by the big man himself and everything going to crap for the kiddos. But then the manga takes a Titan-sized leap into the future, to the point after everyone's gone through their training and bonded and eaten potatoes. From here, there's a scene where Jean and Eren get into a fight. Mikasa, Armin, and Eren have a good chat, and then, well... Now all this carnage and craziness gets the blood pumping, but in the manga, we don't really know any of these people. Of course, we get to learn about them as more and more are picked off and the survivors continue fighting, but we only jump back to the training stuff after Eren's used the boulder to plug up the wall. I'm not really a fan of this structure. This Titan assault is still exciting in the manga, but it isn't particularly personal. Here, the only characters I cared about were Eren, Armin, Mikasa, and as the battle went on, Jean. However, in the anime, I cared about all these other characters too, about Reiner, Annie, Marco, Krista, and Potato Girl. After all, I'd seen them interact with one another, have their fair share of relatively light-hearted moments, and go through the struggles, of training. This way, they truly feel like a team. To me, it's far more interesting to watch characters I already know about interact in an abnormal or extreme scenario. In particular, I love the way the anime charts John's change from a selfish turd to a terrific leader. I also appreciate the fact that this way, more world building happens before the Titans attack again. The more we know about the world that's being threatened, the better. Again, it's more personal this way. One major component of this is seeing how different people react to the Titans. Specifically, we see the important divide between people who've never even seen the Titans and those who've come face to face with the true terror of them. From there, it's interesting to watch how these different characters with various backgrounds and experiences related to the Titans deal with them when the time comes to fight. All the stuff we learn about the main cast, about Eren, Mikasa, and Armin, is equally important. Sure, I cared about them in the manga, but I care about them so much more here. In particular, Eren's drive to kill the Titans is at the forefront of the adventure. Along with that, we see the hardships he goes through to even get the opportunity to fight. We also see his power, perseverance, and his ability to inspire hope in others. The anime leans into this aspect of his character in an added scene too. Here, Eren gets into a fight with one of the soldiers and refuses to eat the bread that he's given. As Mikasa and Armin try to convince him to eat, Armin expresses hopelessness about fighting the Titans, and Eren flips out, telling him to spend his life as cattle. But Mikasa punches him in the face and shoves some bread in his mouth. Here, the early key elements of the relationship between these characters is established in a powerful way. Eren has plenty of willpower and drive, but he can also be reckless and rash. Armin, meanwhile, is more strategic and realistic, but that means that sometimes he might not act fast enough. And Mikasa is concerned with Eren's survival above all else. Of course, all these facts are present in the manga as well, but they come up later. Again, learning more about these people before the big battles occur is far preferable. However, all these changes have another side effect. When Eren dies, it really feels like he's dead. Compared to anime Eren, manga Eren doesn't get that much time before he gets chomped. Since we haven't seen that much of him, his fake-out death in the manga feels incomplete. Like there's no way he's actually dead already because he hasn't had much of an arc. Besides, since I didn't care all that much about him here, I also wasn't invested in his death. So for me, if he comes back, whatever, that's fine. But the anime Eren has become this leader figure, almost an emotional mentor of sorts who acts to give hope to those around him. In other words, even if he's flawed, there's an ideal contained within him, an ideal that impacts the other characters in dramatic ways. That added scene between Eren, Armin, and Mikasa really leans into this. After all, Armin shows more doubt here than he does in the manga. As such, once Eren gets eaten and Armin and Mikasa need to try to push forward, it feels like they're taking Eren's words, Eren's ideals, and carrying forward past his death. Beyond that, Armin is the narrator of events. My best guess is that he was chosen because he's the most strategic and intelligent of the main cast in this season, so it's pretty natural for him to know about what's going on and relay that to the audience. But it has another effect. It makes it seem more likely that the show will shift its focus to him. This way, Attack on Titan's anime seems to follow a pretty typical pattern in storytelling, where the mentor of sorts dies and the other characters carry on and, using the strength he gave them, grow as people. Now, none of this is to say that Eren should have stayed dead or that reorganizing things was a bad idea. However, when I first watched Season 1, I was disappointed when Eren came back. Even so, since I now know where the story goes, it's hard to imagine Attack on Titan without this moment. I mean, I love Eren now. He's a phenomenal protagonist, and there's a good reason why he's at the center of this work. And fortunately, the story also doesn't make a habit of pulling these shenanigans either. You know, where from the audience's perspective, it seems like surely this character is dead, but nah, they're alive. Since, at least up until where I've read and watched, this is a one-off thing towards the start of the story, it's more forgivable. On top of that, all the positives of reordering shouldn't be overlooked. There's the additional information about the characters in the world early on, the extra weight of knowing who these people are when they're attacked, and the improved pacing when we don't jump back to this stuff later. Overall, I'd much rather be invested enough to be a little disappointed about one decision, instead of detached enough that I don't care that much about the emotional stakes at the beginning of the story. As such, I think this restructuring represents a sizable improvement over the manga, and it's one of the main reasons why I vastly prefer the beginning of the anime to the beginning of the manga. Now, I've already gone over what I think is the biggest change in the first season of Attack on Titan's anime adaptation, but there are plenty of other differences to go over. Some are also pretty big, while others are incredibly tiny. But I think everything is worth discussing. Let's start with added foreshadowing, added foreshadowing, added foreshadowing, added foreshadowing, added foreshadowing. Foreshadowing comes in all sorts of different shapes and sizes. It can be the slightest indication of what's coming up in the story, or it can be Now, the manga's got plenty of its own foreshadowing, but the anime adds even more. There's one main moment where the anime does this, with these flashing images before Eren wakes up right towards the beginning of the series. In the manga, there's just a black panel, but of course, these images correspond to events in the story. For example, we see Titans next to this windmill, indicating that the Titans will invade. In fact, when Eren wakes up, we see the windmills in the background. We also see dead scouts in the forest, and you know, there are gonna be some dead scouts in the forest. There are other things foreshadowed too, but some of it is from later seasons or maybe even stuff we haven't seen yet. Since Spoiler Alert only mentions spoilers for season 1, it's best to move on for now. Alright, next up we've got added scenes in context. Added scenes in context. Whoa, added scenes in context? First off, the show adds in some additional world building or introduces important elements of the story earlier on. Let's begin with Pastor Nick in the first episode, going on about how the walls were constructed with God's wisdom and all that stuff. Of course, this religious group is going to become pretty important later, but adding them in earlier makes the world feel more cohesive while also bringing further attention to some other ways the walls shape people's lives. The second episode has a similar addition, with another pastor reading through Dante's Purgatorio while the Titans eat people. This builds on the already disturbing atmosphere the manga crafted, while also showing us that there are more people like Pastor Nick. The show treats Erwin, Levi, and the Survey Corps somewhat similarly. In particular, we see them returning from another expedition in episode 4 of the anime. Again, this is quick, but it's nice to have these little moments where important elements of the story are slipped in earlier. It provides natural hints of where the story's going and who might be important, and that makes the events of the story flow. Episode 9 also shows a bit more of these characters, with Hanji swinging around like a mad lad and just being a fruitcake. Similarly, we get more about the world's politics via added scenes with the royalty and an altered scene with the military police. Namely, episode 5 shows Pixies and Marquis Bart playing chess. This scene gives us a number of key things about the dynamic between the royalty and the soldiers. First, the royalty is full of incredibly protected people, confined within the inner recesses of the walls. Even so, they're still selfish and ask for the best protection out of anyone. Second, Pixies needs to pretend to lose to him in chess, which also shows that the royalty is quite spoiled and childish. All in all, this scene paints the royalty in an incredibly negative light. But of course, even though this guy is like this, that doesn't mean all the royalty will act the same. Even so, it still gives us a sense of their incompetence and irreverence for others' lives that will pop up later. Next, the military police scene I mentioned occurs in episode 23. In both the anime and the manga, Niall pawns his work onto Marlowe. It becomes clear that, like the royalty, this group can be self-serving and lazy, or that they at least don't care about their duties or take them seriously. From here, the manga shows a frustrated Marlowe discussing how he wants to clean up the military police, and how he's going to turn these people who lack reason into normal humans, as he calls them. But Annie takes issue with this, saying that upstanding people aren't normal. She thinks they're special and rare. In fact, she believes normal people are worthless and evil. She goes on to say, "Even if I'm the kind of weak person who gets swept along with the flow, I just want you to think of me as human." Meanwhile, the anime alters the details and context of this conversation. Now, Marlowe witnesses some members of the military police selling equipment so that it can be traded around on the black market. Marlowe confronts them about this, and they just try to pay him off. When he pushes further, they beat him up. From here, Annie asks Marlowe, "Aren't you going to punish the corrupt? If you want, I'll help you." But Marlowe can't bring himself to do it. He asks if he's simply one of those pieces of trash who just go with the flow. But Annie says that she doesn't know. and that she thinks the weak who get swept along with the flow should be considered human too. The similarities between these two conversations are clear, but the anime gives us a bit more information. Now the military police don't just neglect their duties, they actively profit by selling equipment. On top of that, they do it in broad daylight. All in all, it's clear that this corruption is normalized among the military police. It's also clear that if someone goes against them, well, it might not turn out so well. As such, even though I really like both versions of this conversation, I think the anime's version is even better because it gives us more information about the world and the characters while still keeping the core elements of this manga conversation intact. Naturally, in both versions of the story, this portrayal of the military police is in stark contrast to the terrifying job the Survey Corps has. However, the anime adds in more scenes that show just how harrowing it is to be a member of the Survey Corps. There are two major sections like this that come to my mind immediately. First, we see a bit more of Erwin's confrontation with the military police during the plan to capture Annie. Again, the show is leaning into the internal conflict between different types of soldiers. So Erwin isn't just going up against the Titans, he's going up against these other people too. Of course, there are other moments in the manga and anime where we see that, but in this case, Erwin nearly gets killed by Nile. However, the next scene related to this is one of my favorite added scenes in the whole anime. See, after the fight with the female Titan in the manga, Eren wakes up for a moment, asks what happened, and falls asleep again. From there, we cut to the Survey Corps going back inside the wall. But the anime does something very different. First, we see Levi mourning a little bit while Jean, Armin, Connie, and Sasha talk about how horrible this is. Erwin also discusses what they'll tell the dead soldiers' families, and comes to the conclusion that they won't collect missing bodies. However, two soldiers take issue with this, and question Levi and Erwin. But Levi just tells them, whether you have the body, dead is dead. Naturally, these soldiers don't like that answer, and one of them even asks, don't the two of you have any human feelings at all? From here, these guys pull a 300 IQ move and decide to try and collect their friend's body on their own. But they get chased by a Titan. One of them dies, and the other only manages to narrowly escape, along with the rest of the Survey Corps, because they dump all the bodies they had collected. Afterward, Levi gives the soldier a Survey Corps patch, saying that it's from their dead friend. In addition, we also get added scenes of families excitedly waiting for soldiers from Squad Levi to return, unaware of the horrible news they'll soon receive. I love that the show slows down for a moment to make the terror of this, the aftermath, feel more real. We also see how one selfish act, no matter how understandable it is, can entirely derail the Survey Corps. Actually, that selfishness results in things getting considerably worse and in greater losses. On top of that, the patch Levi gave to this soldier wasn't really their friend's. No, it was from a member of Levi's own squad. This way, he gives up something sentimental to him, something that meant something to him, in order to make one of his soldiers feel just a little better, in order to hopefully give them that thing that will help them to keep on going. It's a really touching human moment, especially for a character who, due to his position, needs to almost always act in a cold and callous manner. Along with this, those added scenes of families waiting for soldiers to return, it gives such a great sense of how hard it would be to lead in a situation like this, where you need to watch your comrades die, often at your own orders, and go home to face their loved ones. However, many of the altered or added scenes in the anime may exist for another purpose. They might be here to pad out the episode, so that each one can land on a more exciting moment, and so that the season overall can end with a big fight and major conflict getting kinda wrapped up. One example that comes to mind is Jean's gear malfunctioning in episode 12 and 13, which is an anime-only moment. There are also additions like these toward the end of episodes 10 and 11. But the fact that these sections pad out the episode's length doesn't make them bad. In fact, I think these are good moments. For example, with Jean's gear, we see more of these characters working as a team, get a better idea of their dynamic, and we get more of Jean's ability to stay composed in life or death situations. With the other moments, well, I'll get to those more in a little bit. Even so, the show pads out episode length in another way that I really don't like: repeated content. Pretty frequently, at the start of the episode, there will be content from the end of the last episode. Now, sometimes this stuff is really brief, and that's fine. It's just getting you caught up, making sure you remember what happened. But there are a number of instances where it takes about 3 to 5 minutes to get into new material. I know some people will probably defend this by saying that plenty of long-running anime do this, and those are anime often with way less in the way of impressive animation. But even if other shows do this, and even if I can understand why this show is doing it, that doesn't make it a good thing. It just gets a bit annoying to try to skip past the repeated bits to get into the new stuff. Of course, I understand if you're more readily able to forgive this because the show does look great. In fact, I'm able to forgive this because of that fact. But I still wish this wasn't the case. With that out of the way, I want to discuss something a bit different now. The changes related to Eren. Whoa. The changes related to Eren. There are quite a number of these, and while none of them are all that extreme, I really like the way that the anime tweaks Eren's characterization and overall portrayal. First, there's some additional dialogue between Eren and his mom.
あらエレン、今日は珍しく頑張ったじゃない。
おう。なんだよ。
耳が赤かった。嘘ついた証拠。ミカサに手伝ってもらったのね。
It's a small interaction, but at this stage in the story, any little bit of personal time we get between these characters means a lot. After all, Mom's not going to be doing so well in the next 10 minutes or so. Even without other context, it's easy to imagine why losing her means a lot to Eren. She is his mother after all. But it means even more when we get these details about their relationship specifically. This bit of dialogue gives us some of that. There's also a somewhat similar moment between Armin and his grandfather, so it's not like Eren is the only one to get this treatment. Still, I think this small added moment with Eren's mom is incredibly effective because, well, Eren's going to keep coming back to this moment. In fact, for a whole lot of this series, it's going to be the primary thing driving him forward, the core of his hatred for these titans. As such, knowing even a little more about her goes a long way. There's also this part, where Eren shows more doubt about plugging the hole in the wall. In the manga, Pixies asks him if he'll do it, and Eren's just like, yeah bro, no doubt in my mind, of course I'll plug that hole. In the anime though, he's not quite so sure of himself. He needs to think about it a bit more. Personally, I'm pretty neutral about this change. Sure, anime Eren seems a little less self-assured here, but it's a small thing. This is also an example of one of those scenes that I think, at least in part, exists to pad out the episode's length. Similarly, there's this section in episode 11, where these characters express doubts in Eren's ability to plug up the hole.
司令、一つよろしいでしょうか。
なんじゃ。
人間兵器とやらは本当に機能するのですか。
よせ、リコ。
あなただ敵念を抱いてるんでしょう。
Through this, we get more details on what's at stake here, with Rico telling Eren all about the people who might die and how he better feel prepared. Naturally, these are things the audience already implicitly knows. Of course there's a lot at stake here. Of course, there's many lives to be lost. But I think being told specifics makes the conflict more personal. This isn't the only moment where anime Eren is a bit less self-assured than manga Eren, or where we see a bit more of just how much everyone's counting on him. Eren has an internal conflict that's nowhere near as big of a deal in the manga. Here, Eren needs to turn into a Titan and fight Annie. Understandably, he's having some trouble. After all, Annie was his comrade and there's a whole lot riding on him. In the manga, well, he can't transform at first. But then things really start heating up and Mikasa says, the world is cruel. And Eren manages to transform. As such, we get a glimpse of his doubts, but they don't have much of an impact. In the anime though, he has trouble transforming, gets stuck in some debris, and a whole alternate plan needs to get carried out. The weight on his shoulders feels so real here. One moment of hesitation leads to all this, and all these plans need to be in place just in case he can't rise to the occasion. Then Armin tries to dig him out, Jean gets pissed, and we get some breathtaking animation. I also love the way we see Eren losing a bit of his humanity, with how he comes to the conclusion that he clung to his companions and his ties, and that's why he failed. But then he remembers his rage, and he thinks, there's no time to figure out if this is the right thing to do. Don't try to keep your hands clean. That's right, the world is cruel. Overall, the anime actually leans into this idea a lot more here. The idea that Eren may need to give up his humanity in order to be a weapon for humanity. See, in the manga, Annie doesn't get humanized all that much when she's in her Titan form. While she looks really freaked out when she's almost caught by Hanji. Even more importantly, when she's trying to escape over the wall, she goes from pretty well put together to missing a limb, bleeding out, and running away in a panic. Now this isn't a Titan fighting another Titan. This is a monster hunting its prey. But Eren still has at least a bit of that humanity in him, and he hesitates to grab Annie. Because of that, she has enough time to protect herself. As such, Armin tells him that it's his fault that they can't get more information from Annie now. There's a sense that if Eren had truly abandoned his humanity, his past ties, things could have turned out better. Later, Jean offers some criticism of Armin's mentality, saying, even if he did become a monster and destroyed all the Titans, would that really be a victory for humanity? Overall, I love the additions made to this anime. I love the way it was adapted. I love the animation. I love the music. This is just a fantastic adaptation. In fact, one of the strongest adaptations I've seen. All these core ideas from the manga are kept intact here. I pretty much have no complaints about this adaptation other than that little thing about sometimes recapping for too long at the beginning of episodes, but that's really not a big deal, especially when faced with the pure quality of the rest of this. Anyway, I've probably gushed enough about Season 1. So, let's get into Season 2, but that'll be next time because this video is already at least 30 minutes long, probably longer, and I've got to release something at some point. So I'll be releasing a video on Season 2 in the near future. But first, it's sponsorship time with Skillshare. Skillshare has thousands of classes to help creative and curious people learn new skills, experiment with art forms, and explore their passions. They have classes on animation, film and video production, music creation, and more. Personally, after listening to Attack on Titan's insanely good soundtrack, I've been looking at Skillshare's music production classes. I checked out Young Guru's class, Learn How to Mix Music. Here, Young Guru goes over how to, well, mix music, and he does a really good job of that. In particular, I found his tips on placing instruments in the mix incredibly useful, and I know I'll be coming back to watch this class again when I go to make some music. Another thing I really like about Skillshare, though, is that there are no ads. And with an annual subscription, it's less than $10 a month. Additionally, the first 1,000 people to click the link in the description will get a free trial to the premium membership. So click that link if you want to learn some stuff, and I hope to see ya for the next video. Either way, though, thank you to everyone who supports me in making these videos. I really appreciate it. It's actually amazing that I get to do this as basically a job now, and yeah, just thank you. And I hope you enjoyed this one, and I hope you have a great day. See you next time.